Hello and welcome to All About Billings. We are a show dedicated to discovering the people who make Billings a great place to work and live. We will interview local business people, community leaders, artists, entertainers, and we will learn from them all about their successes, their challenges, and their connection to Billings. I'm your host, Nancy Brook, broker and owner at Billings Best Real Estate. And today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Sara Beth Wald. And Sara Beth has a business called Redefining Love. And today we're going to learn all about her business, her workshops, and her coaching. So welcome to the show, Sara Beth.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is wonderful to meet you and to chat a little bit before. So I was really interested in your business, Redefining Love, but let's start with who you are and basically, how did you get started in this business?
Yeah, well, it's been a very interesting and exciting winding road to get here. I was a social worker for many, many years and a journalist, which is sometimes an interesting combination, but at my heart, I'm a writer. So in 2018, I started a blog called Redefining Love. And it was at first more a personal journey of my own trauma healing. And as I got going, I started to realize that the real issue for me was my own definition of love. It just didn't serve me. It didn't leave space for my own mental health. So, what I was kind of stuck with was this feeling of these people that had hurt me in my past that I still had connection to, and I wanted to figure out a way to love them with setting boundaries, having some accountability. I felt like if I didn't love with letting them have full access to my heart and my life, then I wasn't being loving at all. So I decided I needed to redefine love. I'm a writer, I like words, and I thought I need a new definition of love. And what I discovered was that healthy love required boundaries, accountability, and grace towards ourselves and others. And I kind of organically created this framework that people started responding to. So it grew, it kind of took on a life of its own. And it's been really incredible to kind of watch it be almost its own thing, its own living, breathing thing, and it seems to help other people as much as it helped me. And so I started coaching it, and then I wrote a book, and I did a TEDx talk all about redefining love and my journey in that. So that's how I got here.
Well, and that's not an easy task to do. I mean, the human condition is, right, we hurt each other,
yes,
whether we intentionally do or not.
Yes.
And as hurt people, sometimes we just want to avoid those bad situations again. And so we have a tendency, I would imagine, to kind of block off our heart,
yes,
and not be open, not only to the people who've hurt us, but just to people in general.
Yes.
So it sounds like you're just trying to give people the tools to ease up on that.
Yes, to continue to love without either shutting ourselves off or sacrificing ourselves to the point that we lose ourselves in the other person. So that's where boundaries is a big buzzword right now anyways, and there's a reason for that, because we all kind of need them for ourselves and for other people. But what I love about Redefining Love is that there's space to continue loving people even as we set those boundaries and have those hard conversations around accountability. That's where the grace comes in. So realizing that we all need to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're all doing the best we can with the tools that we have, without sacrificing our own mental health in the process of realizing that. So
well, and let's just kind of use an example. Let's say I'm a young lady, I've been married, my spouse was, maybe not abusive, but maybe cheated on me, so I have a lot of upset over that. We're no longer, married.
Yeah.
But I have a kid with this person.
Absolutely.
And so that's like a real life situation. And that's not
Yes.
even, things obviously can get really even worse.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of trauma. But that would be an example. So how would I go about, beginning to heal that relationship?
Yep, absolutely. So the work that I do, if that our sample person was in a coaching situation with me, would be to first help them to figure out the space that they take up in the world. So the metaphor that I use for folks is, imagine if you were building a fence around your property. And if you don't get it surveyed, you don't know where the property line is. So you're either going to build your fence too far in and encroach on somebody else's space, or you're going to build it too close to your own property and you don't give yourself enough space. So the first step is actually self-awareness and really connecting with who you are and what space you take up in the world, because only then can we decide, okay, you've crossed the line. You can't decide that if you don't know where that line is. So that's the first step that I go with them, and then we practice. Most of us lean one or the other. We are either too permissive and we don't allow ourselves enough space, or we encroach on other people's space. And so the next step is to figure out, okay, now that we know the property line, what changes in behavior need to happen in order for you to protect yourself while also respecting the other person's space as well. So there's that situation. I've worked a lot with those kinds of situations. I was in that myself, where I co-parent with my older son's dad, and that was one of the relationships and one of the situations I had to navigate, where it was like, I need to figure out some ground rules for myself, which is that accountability for self piece. It's also, I see it a lot in parents or adult children who are still struggling with maybe their parents were abusive, or maybe not even abusive physically, but they have a really complex relationship with their parents, and certainly they don't want to hate their parents, but they don't know what that boundary should be. So I work a lot with folks through that.
Well, and sometimes just in life it's easier to just avoid those situations, but it's not necessarily maybe what you really want. I mean, like you don't want to get hurt again, you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation, but you also maybe for whatever reason want to have a relationship, let's say with a parent, because then you can see her sisters and whatever over the holidays.
Right, yes.
An extended family, and so that's a tricky thing to navigate. And again, we're not even necessarily, I mean, and especially if it is like even more abusive, but even just like you said, a complicated situation where she thinks this way, you think this way, and you just clash.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, most of the folks that I work with are not, I make sure that I tell people I'm not a therapist. I am a coach, and I coach a very specific framework. So when I get people with really severe trauma, unless they've already done a lot of work around that, I usually refer them on to a therapist. So I get a lot of those situations that are really gray, they're nuanced, it's messy, and it's maybe not explosive, but it's also impeding on their relationship. And then there's that generational trauma where if we don't deal with stuff, we pass it on to our kids. And so a huge part of my work is helping people to break those cycles of trauma and figure out ways to teach their kids how to hold space for themselves and other people, so that we can stop that cycle from turning.
And I think maybe just being aware of what the situation is. Like, okay, I'm avoiding whatever, my mom, my dad, because this is what happens. And then you become aware of it, and then you can make a conscious choice.
Yes.
Is that what I really want?
Yes.
And maybe some people do.
Yeah.
Maybe some people that's completely fine and that's a valid decision. But sometimes you say, well, maybe I'd really like to engage with her sort of on a more social level with other people involved.
Yeah.
So, like you said, there's some nuances there.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't even pay attention, you're not even aware of what's happening.
Yeah, well, and you really hit on an important piece of redefining love. So I talk a lot about intention and curiosity, and all of that is connected to self-awareness. I'm a big believer that what we tend to do is run away from the discomfort, and we need to shift that perspective to those are the places you need to dig in. And if it's uncomfortable, that's our body's way of telling us, like, okay, this is a problem area, so let's deal with it. And so what I really like to do is hold space for that, because I don't know that we do that well, generally speaking, is holding space for the uncomfortable conversations and the conflict. And I've actually come to kind of, I don't know if enjoy conflict is the right phrase, but I embrace it, because it's not good or bad. Conflict just is. It's just two different people having different perspectives. And so I've really made peace with conflict. It's just, okay, I see that we have a conflict here. How do we resolve this? And that's where that intention and curiosity come in.
Well, sometimes there's, like, maybe you have a willingness, but the other side can be, let's say, just real stuck in their way of seeing things. You know, and we see it a lot, not that I want to get into politics, but we see it a lot where people put their stake down, and if you don't think the way I do, I don't even want to talk to you. You're seeing that a lot with families and friends, and it's become very divisive.
Yes.
So that's an example of not abuse, but it's just something that you maybe can navigate through, but sometimes if the other party isn't willing, then what?
Yes, and again, you really nailed it there. I would love to say that in every situation that I work with, everyone involved redefines love. Everyone involved sits down and talks about boundaries, accountability, and grace. And it's actually pretty rare. I've only seen it a few times with clients where the whole family's involved, and man, that is exciting. It's the best feeling. But a lot of time, I'm working with folks to help them figure out a way to hold all those boundaries, respect themselves, respect the other person, while the other person isn't doing any work at all. And sometimes that does result in physical or emotional distance. And I call it making your own family, when we really need to create our own support system. And that doesn't mean that you have to reject. I really avoid this black and white, you either do this or that thinking. But it might mean, as you said, we get together over holidays, we exchange pleasantries, but it's not the kind of relationship where I jump on the phone and they're the first person I call when I'm stressed or when I need support. So it might become more of a surface level relationship. And I inevitably then, my work deals a lot with grief. I do a workshop on grief, because there's a grieving process when we realize, okay, this relationship might not be what I want it to be. And that's hard. So a lot of my work is just holding space for people through those hard things.
Well, and you can still make a decision. I mean, obviously, if the other person makes the decision that I don't want to talk to you anymore, I mean, there's only so much you can do at that point.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you can make a decision that you're going to interact with them cordially and on an occasional basis, and allow, I guess, the relationship to be as it is, even though that can be a little bit sad for some people, because if you have somebody that has been close to you and all of a sudden there's a divide, that can bring, like you said, there's some grief to realizing this relationship is never going to, or at least at this point, isn't going to be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
because the other person has a say in it too. And that's what makes
Absolutely.
relationships so complex.
Yes, absolutely.
They don't do what we want them to do.
Yes, exactly. I do a lot of work around, we can only control our own actions and our own perspectives. And so my conflict management workshop talks a lot about you exchange energy, and once you've taken your stand, whatever that might be, with boundaries, accountability, and grace, you can't control how they're going to receive it, and being okay with that. So that involves emotional regulation, and we practice those kinds of skills because it can be really hard to put yourself out there and then have it be received in a really negative way or get a negative response back. So how do we do that? And so we practice that. And also a lot of the work that I do surrounds integrity. So how do you maintain how do you live with yourself? How do you maintain your integrity while you're faced with someone else who has different values or does not share your approach with grace? And how will you be able to sleep at night? And a big question that I ask folks is, do you like the person that you are in this situation? And so we talk a lot about, that's kind of a values assessment, and who do you want to be in the world? Who do you want to be in this relationship, but also just who do you want to be? Who do you want your kids to see you being? And so it's a big conversation around self-awareness. Again, it kind of brings us all the way back to your original point.
Well, yeah, and I can see just making that effort, sometimes realizing what you want, and sometimes things can evolve, I would say.
They do,
sometimes, it's like, let's go back to the political differences, maybe even just saying, you know what, I'm not trying to change your point of view, and I'm probably not going to change my point of view, but do we even have to talk about it at Thanksgiving?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I mean, there's a point, can we just enjoy each other's company without regards to things that divide us?
Yes. And a lot of it, like I use Thanksgiving as an example a lot because that just feels like kind of a minefield for a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
right.
A lot of people can relate to that. And there's always that uncle or that in-law or whatever it is, that always is going to bring it up. And so I will practice with people, okay, so how will you respond in a way that feels true to you, that protects your peace and your space, but also doesn't create drama at Thanksgiving? And so it is a lot of like role playing, like I'm just not going to engage with that conversation with you. And how do you say that with grace versus, getting up from the table and slamming a door behind you?
Right. And we've all had that.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether it's at Thanksgiving or not, everyone, I'm sure, on planet Earth has had that kind of an interaction where all of a sudden everyone gets escalated.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to say not maybe throwing things at each other, but physically you just can see that. Aggressiveness come out.
Yes, and even if there's not a physical awareness, there's that energetic exchange that just gets really electric and messy. And so we practice that. What I love to hear is somebody say, hey, I did some breathing exercises before I got out of the car, and I went in, and when the conversation started, I just politely removed myself, and I set a boundary, and it was okay. And I think part of it too is helping people realize we create this narrative in our brain. Brené Brown calls it the story we tell ourselves. And usually it's not as bad as we think it's going to be. So we create this whole scenario, this sort of chaotic scenario that never comes to be. So we do a lot of that what if. So what if they do say that? And what if you do say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this conversation, so I'm just going to step out. And they're like, oh, that would be terrible. No one would ever speak to me. And it turns out if they try it, people actually, they either respect it and they admire it. They might inspire somebody else who's like, hey, me too. I felt that too. Thank you for saying something. Or in the very least, the world doesn't stop turning, you know?
Well, and you can even do degrees, right? You could say something like that. I'm not comfortable with this conversation. You could just get up and move away from the person.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're sitting at dinner, that's a little hard.
Yeah.
But you could say, oh, excuse me, and
yes, absolutely.
go to the restroom or go visit with somebody else. I mean, you do have choices. You're not stuck with somebody who's confrontive and feeling like you have to sustain, I'm going to call it abuse, but I'm going to put it in quotes. You know, I mean, it's not maybe like severe abuse, but it's a little abusive if the person knows you have a different way of looking at the world and they are
right. Yeah, it is a form of abuse or just toxic behavior, whatever it is.
Toxic behavior, I like that.
But yeah, you're right. There's so many different ways to handle that in very quiet ways. It involves picking your battles. You don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. So yeah, we do a lot of work around conflict. Because really, if there's not a conflict, then we don't need to think about boundaries as much. They're always there, but yeah. And then we also do work around creating a safe community for yourself. Because a lot of people feel like if I have this conversation with my family, then I have no one. They will reject me and I'll have no one. And so a lot of times one of the first things we work on is okay, so how can we build you a better community that you feel safe in? How can we build you a safety net that you can fall back on, whether it's a faith community or a book club you join?
Sure.
I mean, there's all sorts of ways and it's amazing that a lot of us, and myself included when I started this journey, I don't know that I realized like there's a whole world of people out there to connect with. And so it's really fun to watch people kind of be like, you know what, I've always loved to paint. Maybe I'll join a painting class.
Well, and that's a good point too, because as we get older, like when we're young, most of us have our best friends or, you know, a group of people that have similar interests, whether you're in band or sports or chess club. You know, you get to know that group and you hang out with them. And as you get older, your world is somewhat limited because you're hanging out with your family or your spouse or your children, and so it becomes just less about connecting with people outside of your immediate family. So I think that's actually really wise. Find some things you enjoy and connect with people. And like you said, faith is a great way because you share that common belief. If you enjoy painting, if you enjoy writing, you can find lots of different people in the world. So I like that. Well, I want to make sure we talk about your workshops. This time has just really gone by. So you have workshops going on, and you told me they're going on every week.
Yep, every week.
Which is amazing. So let's put up that website. It's redefine-love.com. That's where you can find all these. So let's talk about some of these that are coming up. And of course, you know, if you're seeing this later than when it airs originally, just go to the website and you'll see what else is new. So you have some coming up in February. The next one is It's All Fun and Games. What's that one about?
So this one is, February is always, it feels a little bit like this time of year. We're in the doldrums and we might be a little bit stir crazy. So I tried to pick something that's a little less intense of some of my topics. And it's where adults actually play children's games. And I use those to talk about some of the lessons that we need to unlearn from childhood, scarcity mindset. And we play Simon Says, where it's like no matter what the ridiculous expectation is, you're expected to do this thing. You know, you're patting your head and you're jumping around, and maybe it's okay to make your own course. You know, as kids, we get taught some of these lessons. We play musical chairs and we learn that, you know, there's not enough to go around. There's not enough resources. There's not enough space. And so we kind of have to elbow each other out. And that's not really the way the world works. So that's what It's All Fun and Games is about. We have some fun. It's a more relaxed topic. In January, we talked about forgiveness, which is a pretty intense topic, although super important. And I think people, it was a really resonant experience for people. But February, we're lightening it up a little bit.
And then you have boundaries.
March, we're doing boundaries, yes, which I just did in I think November, but I'm doing it again because it's so important. It's such a foundational workshop and concept for good mental health. So we're doing that one again in March. Yep, every week in March.
Child safety, you have emotions, the brain's dashboard.
Yep, that one we talk a lot about emotional regulation and how to listen to our bodies and what emotions. We tend to kind of think emotions are bad, especially the negative ones, the ones we call negative, when in reality they're just warnings. They're just a dashboard telling us, okay, this is something you need to pay attention to.
So like a warning light for your car.
Yeah, yes.
Your gas is running out.
Yes.
And then my personal favorite, I love this title, Gaslight versus Green Lighting.
Yes, yep. We're going to tackle that it's a trendy word right now, gaslighting.
It is.
Yes, but what does it mean? I don't know, people don't always know, they hear it, but they don't know what it means. So we're going to dig into that.
Well, and so we talked about your website. How do people, I guess, access so they go to the website, but how do they access the seminars that you're doing, coaching? Is it all on the website?
It is all on the website. So if you go to the website, redefine-love.com, there's a workshops tab, and if you go to that one, you can actually register. You can pick your time and your date, and I do them at different locations around Billings, and different times, with the goal of making it accessible to as many people as possible. So you go, you select your day and your time, and you sign up, and you can accept a scholarship. So I don't ever want cost to be a barrier for people. So there's an opportunity to either pay or accept a scholarship, and I have no judgment. There's no application. Just come. I just want to fill the room with as many learners as possible. So. And people can donate to scholarships if they'd like to sponsor somebody else. So there's another tab on the website for that. And that's hugely helpful to continue this mission of my mental health education. And then if they want to reach out to me, there's a contact form on there and my email, and so they can do that too and get a hold of me.
Well, we're just making the world more loving through your efforts, one person at a time, one workshop at a time.
Yeah, the mission of Redefining Love is we'll heal our culture when we heal our trauma, one individual at a time. So
love it.
I really do believe that every time somebody heals from trauma or heals a relationship, it's making the world a better place, because it passes on to the next people, the people in their circle, their children, their spouses, their coworkers. Just makes the world a better place. So,
well, it has been a pleasure interviewing you today and learning
thanks.
all about redefining love. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us on All About Billings, and we hope to see you next time.